She didn't hand me the divorce papers. She handed them to my assistant, and I watched it happen in my own office. Rachel walked in right behind them. No hesitation, no apology. She set her attorney's card on the edge of my desk and said, quietly, almost gently, "You'll want to get someone." The way you say it when you've already decided the outcome isn't in question. Then she turned and walked out of my own office without looking back once. By the time I got downstairs, everything was locked. Accounts, investments, even the house. 28 years. And she erased me in under 10 minutes. I remember standing there thinking, this is the office I built. These are my people. I trained every one of them. And she chose this room, this moment, these witnesses, on purpose. I sat down and read every page. The firm, Harmon Advisory, listed as a marital asset. The house on Wellesley Avenue, full marital equity claimed. My SEP IRA, flagged for court disclosure. $580,000 of paid-off property. 6 a.m. site walks. Deals held together by my word alone. A business built from one warehouse lease and one client who trusted me when nobody else would. 28 years of that work. She wanted all of it. I didn't move for a long time after she left. Sandra came back in, asked if I needed anything. I told her I was fine. I wasn't fine, but that wasn't something Rachel needed to know. What I didn't tell Sandra, what Rachel had no idea about, was that her plan had already failed before she walked through my door. Marcus didn't hesitate. He called me that same evening, everything, word for word. My CPA, 11 years, every return, every quarterly filing, every dollar that ever moved through Harmon Advisory. Marcus had touched it. Rachel knew that. So the week before she filed, she called him directly, told him what she needed, implied the right cooperation would be worth his while. He chose differently. I looked at her attorney's card on my desk. Mecklenburg County Superior Court, 6 blocks away. Preliminary hearing in 72 hours. She was walking into that courtroom believing Marcus was hers. She had no idea he'd already chosen mine. Everything I'd built in 28 years was sitting in a courtroom filing. Frozen. Flagged. Claimed. 28 years of work, and it all looked like it could vanish in a heartbeat. And Rachel was somewhere downtown believing the hard part was already over. She had no idea it hadn't started yet. My phone rang at 6:48 the next morning. Patricia Vaughn. Family Law, South Tryon Street, Charlotte. I'd called her the same night Marcus called me, before Rachel filed, before the papers, before any of it. They moved again, she said. No greeting, no warm-up. Emergency motion, filed this morning. Exclusive use of the marital home. She wants you out within 72 hours. And they've requested a full freeze on Harmon Advisory pending business valuation. I sat with that for a second. Not because I was surprised, because it was faster than I expected. How much? I asked. Everything, Patricia said. The operating account, the receivables, the pipeline. If this goes through, you can't sign a contract, pay a vendor, or close a single deal until the court lifts it. She hadn't just gone for the assets. She'd gone for the ability to operate at all. I told Patricia to hold the motion. Then I told her what Marcus had found. 3 years of statements, a secondary LLC, Coastal Meridian Consulting, registered in Rachel's name. 11 months after our anniversary. Small transfers at first, then larger. End of quarter, same pattern, same routing. $180,000. Moved out of joint accounts, into that LLC, over 36 months. I felt sick. How had I missed this? While I was closing deals, I had no idea. While I was at 6 a.m. site walks, my trust was being drained dollar by dollar. While I thought we were building something together, she was building something else entirely. Something colder than rage settled in my chest. The kind of feeling you get when the math finally adds up, and you realize the number has been wrong for years. Patricia went quiet for a moment. Then, she filed first because she thought she had the cleaner position. She did, I said, until Marcus made a different call. Patricia told me to bring everything to her office by noon, 48 hours before the emergency hearing. 48 hours to turn the tables, or lose everything. If this story is hitting close to home, rate it 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback tells me which stories to bring next. I pulled up to her building on South Tryon at 11:40. Folder on the passenger seat. $180,000 of documented transfers. 3 years of a private LLC Rachel had never once mentioned, never disclosed, never explained. She'd built her entire case on the assumption that I had nothing. I walked through Patricia's door and set the folder on her desk. Then my phone lit up. Unknown number. Charlotte area code. I picked up. A man's voice. Calm, professional. Said he was a forensic business valuator. Said he'd been contacted about Harmon Advisory. Said he'd already spoken to someone connected to my firm. Someone I hadn't expected. Someone who had access to financials Rachel hadn't even known existed. Someone who knew exactly where the company's deepest records were buried. I hung up. Looked at Patricia. She was already reading the transfer documents. The emergency hearing, she said without looking up. They moved it. To when? She turned the paper toward me. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Mecklenburg County Superior Court. We had 16 hours, and I still didn't know whose side that valuator was really on. 16 hours. The hearing moved to 9 a.m., the valuator's loyalty unknown, and Rachel, somewhere across Charlotte, believing she'd already won. Patricia and I worked until past midnight. Transfer records spread across her desk, Marcus's full 3-year documentation, the LLC filings, the routing numbers, every quarterly movement mapped against Harmon Advisory's calendar, date by date, dollar by dollar, building something that couldn't be argued away in a courtroom. Then Marcus called. There's a second name, he said. On the LLC, Coastal Meridian. It has a second signatory, someone with full account access. I looked at Patricia. She set her pen down slowly. Who? Marcus told us the name. I didn't move for a moment, didn't speak, just sat there while something cold and quiet settled through my chest. Not rage, not disbelief, something worse than both. The kind of stillness that comes when a pattern you've been circling for years suddenly has a center. And the center is someone you let inside your firm. Rachel hadn't been working alone. Patricia filed the counter motion at 7:14 a.m. Rachel's LLC listed as financial dissipation of marital assets, $180,000, 36 months of documented transfers. The second signatory named, Marcus's full report attached as evidence. By 8 a.m., Rachel's attorney called Patricia. Settlement offer, quietly worded, carefully framed. The kind of offer that gets made when someone realizes the ground has shifted under them and they'd rather step back than fall. Patricia looked at me across the desk, said nothing, just waited. No, I said. We go to court. She nodded once, closed her notepad. Then let's go. Mecklenburg County Superior Court, South Side entrance, 8:47 a.m. The air was cold and sharp. The kind of November morning in Charlotte where the sky sits low and gray and everything feels like it matters. The courthouse steps were still damp from overnight rain. Rachel was already inside. I saw her through the glass before I pushed the door open. New outfit, composed. Her attorney leaning close, saying something quiet, and then a small smile. Not arrogance exactly, the smile of someone who believes they've already accounted for every variable. Type yes in the comments if you think Rachel walks out of that courtroom with everything she planned. Type no if you think she's already lost. I want to see what you believe. I watched that smile for a second longer than I needed to, and then something clicked. The quarterly transfers, every single one. I checked the dates in my head. Not random end-of-quarter timing. They happened the week after our anniversary. Every year, 3 years straight. I'd always thought she was distant those weeks, preoccupied. I put it down to the marriage cooling, the slow distance that builds between two people who stop reaching. But she wasn't distant. She was working. And the second name on that LLC, I knew it. Not from any filing, not from any document Patricia had put in front of me, from my own conference room, 18 months ago. A man named Gareth Cole, standing at the head of my table, asking careful questions about Harmon Advisory's asset structure. Questions I'd answered without hesitation because I thought he was a potential investor. I pushed through the courthouse door. I finally understood what kind of investor he really was. 16 hours ago, Rachel had made a settlement offer. We'd said no. Now we were back in the same courtroom, and she still didn't know what Patricia had filed. Rachel sat at her table, composed, precise, that same careful stillness. Her attorney had a fresh legal pad, a new pen uncapped, ready. She didn't know what Patricia had filed at 7:14 that morning. Patricia opened with financials. No drama. Date by date, transfer by transfer, $180,000 laid out in front of the judge like a blueprint. Clean, documented, undeniable. Rachel's attorney objected twice. Both overruled. Then Patricia said 4 words that changed the temperature of the room. The state calls Gareth Cole. I watched Rachel's face. That careful stillness, it didn't break, but something behind it did. A microfracture. The kind you only catch if you've been watching someone closely for a very long time. I had. Cole took the stand. Gray suit, the same careful confidence he'd worn into my conference room 18 months ago. Patricia didn't rush. She established the LLC first. Coastal Meridian, registered jointly, Cole's signature on the founding documents, his routing number on 11 of the 37 transfers. Then she moved to the timeline. Cole had attended 3 meetings at Harmon Advisory as a prospective investor. During those meetings, he'd been given access to confidential client financials, non-public acquisition targets. That information had appeared in Coastal Meridian's business filings 6 weeks later. Cole shifted in his seat. Rachel's attorney stopped writing. The judge leaned forward and asked Patricia to repeat the last exhibit number. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet question, and the entire weight of the courtroom shifted with it. When you reach the end of this story, rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback tells me which stories to bring next. At 11:40 a.m., the judge called a brief recess. I stood in the corridor, Patricia beside me. She said she'd seen the judge's expression twice in 20 years. Both times, the ruling had been decisive. I watched Rachel through the courtroom door's narrow window. Phone out, back turned, speaking quietly. One hand pressed flat against the wall like she needed something solid. Then she looked up, straight at me. She didn't look defeated. She looked like someone who had just made a decision. Whoever she'd called, it wasn't her attorney. The recess lasted 11 minutes. I found out later what Rachel's phone call had been. She'd tried to reach Gareth Cole, wanted him to recant, walk back the LLC connection, claim the documents were misrepresented. Cole didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the night before, at 11:47 p.m., he'd sat across from Patricia in her South Tryon office and signed a sworn affidavit. Full account of Coastal Meridian, full account of the transfers, full account of every meeting at Harmon Advisory and exactly what he'd taken from them. Rachel's last move had failed before she made it. The judge reconvened at 12:04 p.m. She didn't take long. Harmon Advisory, not a marital asset. The firm stayed with me. The $180,000, financial dissipation under North Carolina law, ordered returned, counted directly against Rachel's settlement. Cole's misuse of Harmon Advisory's confidential client data referred to the North Carolina Secretary of State's office. 3 rulings, 3 separate nails, each one landing exactly where it needed to. Rachel would walk away with significantly less than she'd walked in expecting. Rate this story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback tells me which stories to bring you next. I didn't watch Rachel when the rulings landed. I looked at the folder in front of me. Transfer records, LLC filings, Marcus's documentation, Cole's affidavit, everything organized by date, Everything cross-referenced. Everything provable. When I finally looked up, she was already standing. She didn't look at me, didn't speak, just stood there for a moment, very still, staring at the table. Then she picked up her bag and walked out. No scene, no words, nothing. Patricia put her hand briefly on my arm. That was all. Outside, the November air was cold and sharp. I stopped at the top of the courthouse steps. A delivery truck rolled slowly down East Trade Street. A woman walked past with coffee. Pigeons on the courthouse railing, unbothered. Normal life, still moving, completely unaware. I'd walked in that morning with 28 years of work and a folder of documents. I walked out with everything I'd built. That was enough.